The smell of cinnamon and warm butter drifted through the house before sunrise. I moved quietly through the kitchen, careful not to let the oven door creak as I checked the second batch of scones. The first had already cooled on the rack beside the stovetop, their golden tops glistening with a thin brush of milk and honey. Haley never liked scones, not really, but she'd once eaten 3 in a row when she was 12 and said they tasted like holidays. That was enough to make them tradition. The dining room was already set polished to gleam the way William used to like it when we had guests. 12 plates, though only 9 were confirmed. The remaining 3 were always for maybe guests, last-minute +1's neighbors Haley invited on a whim, people who never remembered my name but drank my coffee like it was their right. I used the heirloom china the set with blue vines and gold edges that I'd inherited from my mother. Haley once called it too fancy for real life, but she always touched the rim gently with her fingers when she thought I wasn't looking. The navy dress I wore had a scratchy tag, a clearance rack find that Haley had given me last Christmas. I wore it anyway. My mother taught me to carry myself with dignity, no matter how little room people gave you to stand tall. At 63, I still pressed my hair. Smooth, still powdered my cheeks, still tucked a sprig of rosemary into the napkins, because Haley once said it made the table smell like memory. I lit the last taper candle just as the grandfather clock struck 2. Right on time, the doorbell rang. Haley entered in a fitted cream dress and high heels that clicked like judgment across the hardwood. She smelled faintly of something citrusy and expensive. Her husband, Martin, followed close behind with their 2 children in tow. The kids mumbled greetings without looking up from their phones. Haley leaned in for a quick, practiced hug, her body stiff, her eyes already scanning the room like a checklist. "You didn't have to do all this." "Mom," she said, but her tone held no protest, only expectation. Martin made a straight line for the liquor cabinet. I had stocked it with his favorite scotch, the bottle that cost me the better part of my grocery budget for the week. He didn't say thank you. He never did. The rest arrived in polite waves. College friends of Haley's I could never keep straight. Martin's parents, stiff and cordial. A neighbor couple who'd helped them renovate their new home and now seemed permanently attached. I moved among them like a shadow, offering trays, refilling glasses, laughing softly at jokes no one told to me. The roast I'd basted all morning was met with nods. The cake, a lemon chiffon with raspberry glaze. Haley's childhood favorite was cut and consumed with compliments that landed like air. No one asked how I'd been. No one noticed that I'd dropped 15 pounds since last year, or that the guest bathroom had been repainted. No one mentioned William. By evening, only crumbs and slanted plates remained. The children had disappeared into a back room with their screens. Guests lingered near the door, murmuring goodbyes. Haley stayed behind wine glass in hand, leaning against the counter as I loaded the dishwasher. Her gaze swept over me with a familiar mix of appraisal and calculation. "We need to talk," she said, voice clipped but composed. I closed the dishwasher slowly and turned toward her. About what, sweetheart? Her wine swirled in the glass. She didn't look at me when she answered. "About what we're going to do with you." Haley didn't even pause before continuing. "Martin got the offer in Beaverton. The new house is bigger, better school district. We're moving in 3 weeks. I leaned against the counter, hands folded in front of me. My fingers still smelled faintly of garlic and lemon peel. She sipped her wine. "We've already been talking to someone about Sunset Glen. It's highly rated. Full staff on-site, medical, even gardening programs. You'd like that, wouldn't you?" "Gardening?" I nodded once. "I still check the roses every morning." She didn't laugh. "Exactly. But let's be honest, Mom. This house is too big for you now. It's drafty. The stairs are dangerous. And we both know you're starting to forget things." I blinked once slow. "Like what?" She glanced down at her glass, then back up. "You called me 3 times about your prescription last month, and Mrs. Henley told me she saw you out in the yard past midnight. There was a storm. I was checking the fence line. That's exactly what I mean. Normal people don't garden at midnight." I breathed in. The dishwasher's quiet hum filled the silence. "We've signed the paperwork," she added. "Sunset Glen holds the room until the end of the month. We'll sell the house, put the equity in a fund for your care. Anything left over can go to the kids eventually. I reached for a dish towel and wiped my hands. You've thought of everything. Her expression softened just slightly as if she believed I might thank her. We'll need you to start going through things. You can bring some clothes, personal items, a few pictures if you want. But no furniture. There's no room for that. She took a final sip and placed the glass on the counter with a decisive click. I'll come by Tuesday to help you sort. I folded the towel and set it beside the sink. When do you need my answer? She looked genuinely puzzled. It's not a question, Mom. This is what's happening. You have until the 31st to pack. She turned to go, already pulling out her phone, then stopped halfway to the door. Oh, and if there's cake left, could you box it up for the kids? They'll want it tomorrow. She didn't wait for a reply. I stood there for a long time after the door closed the kitchen, dimming into the hush of early evening. The house felt hollow, but not empty. It felt like the last moment before a wind changes. I walked to the window and looked out at the back garden where the hydrangeas had finally come into bloom. Beyond the flowers stood the old tool shed, its paint-peeling roof slightly crooked just as William left it. By morning, I knew I'd need to decide what stayed and what went. I woke before the sun. The bedroom was still heavy with the scent of yesterday's perfume, the one I dabbed behind my ears out of habit, not vanity. I didn't lie in bed and think it over. I already knew what needed to be done. Some part of me had known it the moment Haley said I had until the 31st. By 7 Ozerer, I'd made coffee and sat with the newspaper untouched on the table. My fingers hovered over my phone before dialing. The realtor answered on the third ring. Connie Phillips Realty. Yes. I need to speak with someone about selling my house. Quickly. Of course, ma'am. When were you thinking? 10 days. Sooner, if possible. A pause, then a polite intake of breath. That's a tight window. I'm flexible on price, I said. But the date is firm. By 10, I was watching a stranger walk through my living room, her heels silent on the carpet, eyes assessing value where I had once built meaning. It's a charming space, she said, voice bright. Solid bones, good light. Make it disappear, I said quietly. Before the month ends. That afternoon, I called Jonas Cray. He picked up immediately. Ms. Ellerby Corinne Jonas. We're well past formality. He laughed softly. Fair enough. How are you? I'm calling with a strange question, I said. How would you and your family feel about living in a house with hydrangeas and creaky steps? He didn't answer right away. This house needs someone who'll use it, not liquidate it, I continued. It was never built to be an investment. It was built to hold people. Are you serious? I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'm signing over the deed by the end of the week. Corinne, I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. You've earned it. For 15 years, you've brought your wife and your boys here for Sunday dinners. You never came expecting anything. You came because you belonged. He was quiet, and then I heard him cover the phone and say something to someone, his wife maybe. When he came back, his voice was thicker. We'd take care of it. And the garden. And the swing William built. I know you will. I spent the rest of the day sorting what mattered and what didn't. I packed 2 suitcases, one for clothes, one for memory. I let go of more than I kept. The wedding dress I hadn't looked at in 20 years. The chipped teacups from my mother. A drawer of expired warranties. Some items I left on purpose like breadcrumbs for someone else to follow. In the back of my closet, folded between old sweaters, I found the pamphlet I'd sent away for years ago. Southwest Institute of Conservation Arts, Santa Fe, New Mexico. The corner was curled, the ink slightly faded. I smoothed it flat with the back of my hand. Before dinner, I called the number on the back. Enrollment was still open. They had 1 space left for the art restoration program starting next week. I didn't hesitate. I booked the flight after I hung up. One way. The next morning, I met with my lawyer and signed the transfer papers. Jonas would officially take ownership of the house once the sale closed. He didn't want me to pay the property taxes for the transition month. I insisted. That evening, I wrote 1 letter. It was short. I didn't explain anything beyond what I owed her. I left it in a plain envelope on the entryway table addressed to Haley. Just her name in my handwriting. The letter read, Dear Haley, You said all I ever gave you was responsibility. I'm giving you something else now, nothing left to carry. Love, Mom. I left the house just after sunrise the following day. The front gate creaked as I closed it behind me. The roses along the path were blooming later than usual, but their petals held. The morning air was crisp, and for the first time in years, it tasted like the beginning of something. The engine hadn't cooled before Haley was out of the car, keys clenched in her hand like proof of ownership. She moved fast in that clipped way she always had when something wasn't going according to plan. From across the street, I imagine it must have looked ordinary, just a daughter coming home, but I wasn't there to open the door. She tried the key. It didn't fit. Tried again, harder. Then rang the bell. 3 times. The door opened a crack. A small voice said, "Hi," before the girl pushed it open wider. She couldn't have been more than 6 long braid socks slightly mismatched. She stared up at Haley, curious but calm. "Is your mother home?" Haley asked, stiff smile in place. "She's at work," the girl replied. "My dad's in the back." "Do you want me to get him?" Haley blinked. "Your dad." Before the child could answer, Jonas stepped into view behind her. His face was familiar, gentle, composed, but firm. "Haley," he said, like it had only been a few months. "Didn't expect to see you here." "What is this?" she asked. "Where's my mother?" Jonas stepped forward, gently placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder before nudging her inside. "Corinne's not here. She left last week, said she needed a change. She left where she didn't tell you." "No, she..." Haley faltered, eyes darting past him. The house was the same and completely different. Toys in the corner of the front room. A mug she didn't recognize on the hall table. A different smell, vanilla and something warm. Jonas stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind him. "This is our home now. She asked us to take care of it." Haley stared at him. "She gave it to you. She said it needed people who'd use it, not sell it." He said it without apology. "I'm her daughter." "I know," Jonas said gently. "And she left something for you. A letter. It was on the table when we moved in, but maybe you'll want to ask the lawyer." Haley didn't reply. Her lips pressed into a tight line, the kind she'd worn at her wedding when the flowers arrived the wrong color. Across the street, old Mrs. Langdon came out to collect her mail. She paused when she saw Haley, then smiled faintly. "Your mom looked the happiest I've seen her in years," she called across the lawn, just glowing like someone who finally exhaled. Haley turned back to the door, now shut. Her shoulders squared, but something had dropped behind her eyes. Not anger, not yet. Something closer to disbelief. She stood for another moment, long enough to realize she didn't know where else to go. Then she turned, walked back to her car, and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. The engine didn't matter anymore. Inside the house, Jonas returned to the kitchen where his wife was spooning soup into bowls and their daughter was humming softly to herself. A new key sat in a small ceramic dish by the front door. The call came from Margaret, my lawyer, just after breakfast. Her voice was sharp, more clipped than usual. "She's filed," she said. "Your daughter. Petition for emergency conservatorship. Claims of cognitive decline, erratic behavior, and financial exploitation. Exploit by who she's named Jonas." I sat down slowly at the small table in my rental apartment in Santa Fe. Outside, the sunlight slanted over adobe walls and cracked sidewalks. "She's trying to take back the house. She's trying to take back control," Margaret said. "And unless you come back and fight, she may get it." I was on the next flight home. In the courtroom 2 days later, I wore the same navy dress I'd worn to Haley's birthday, though it fit looser now. I didn't speak when I saw her across the aisle sitting beside a lawyer whose expression was pure calculation. Haley wouldn't meet my eyes. She stared ahead, posture rigid, as though even acknowledging me would undermine her case. The judge was younger than I expected, early 50s, soft-spoken, kind eyes that scanned us with a mix of interest and caution. "This is a petition for conservatorship over Mrs. Corinne Ellerby." He began tapping a pen against a notepad. Haley's lawyer rose first. "Your Honor, Mrs. Ellerby has demonstrated a pattern of disoriented behavior, culminating in the sudden and irresponsible transfer of property, valued at over $400,000 to an unrelated party. She has also removed herself from her primary residence without informing her family and is currently engaged in impulsive activities that suggest diminished capacity. Impulsive, I murmured to Margaret. She means art school, she whispered back. I was called to the stand. The oath felt ceremonial, like stepping onto a stage I hadn't asked to audition for. I looked at the judge directly when he asked why I gave the house to Jonas. Because he was the one who showed up, I said simply. He brought his children. He mowed the lawn when I twisted my ankle. He remembered my birthday. He treated me like someone who still mattered. The judge nodded. And your daughter? I turned my gaze toward Haley. She shifted in her seat. My daughter, I said slowly, once told me that all I ever gave her was responsibility. I paused. She's wrong. I gave her a life. I gave her stability, safety, education traditions. I gave her a home where she never had to wonder if she was loved. And when she wanted to walk away from me, when she told me to, what I gave her was the freedom to do it. A quiet fell over the room. Even the tapping of the judge's pen stopped. Jonas testified next. His voice never wavered. She didn't give me that house. She gave me trust. We never asked for it. She offered it because she wanted it to stay a home. My wife and I plan to raise our children there. We've started repainting the porch. Margaret submitted documentation of my financial independence, medical clearance, proof of enrollment in the program in Santa Fe. I had no debts, no medications that altered cognition, a clean bill of health, and a one-bedroom lease in my own name. Haley didn't testify. The judge's decision was brief. There is no legal basis for conservatorship, he said. Mrs. Ellerby is of sound mind and well within her rights to distribute her assets and make personal decisions as she sees fit. He gave Haley a long, deliberate look. Family concern is not a substitute for personal autonomy. I exhaled slowly. For a moment I forgot Margaret was beside me, forgot the courtroom, the judge, the dull ache in my knees. I looked only at Haley, whose mask cracked just enough for a tremble to show in her chin. She approached me in the hallway outside. I waited. I was scared, she said. You left. You didn't say anything. I thought... She trailed off. I thought I'd lost you. You didn't lose me, Haley? I said. You let me go. She blinked back something unsaid. I'm leaving again, I added. This time by choice. Will you... Tell me where I nodded. If you want to know me beyond the woman who made your lunches and folded your towels, you know where to find me. The sun in Santa Fe doesn't rise, it blooms. Every morning I watched it pour over the adobe walls, warm and soft, like something earned rather than given. My small apartment was above a gallery on a quiet street where the windows rattled when the wind shifted and the air smelled faintly of clay and wood smoke. I had a corner to paint a table to write at and silence that answered to no one. I filled my days with layers, color, memory, and tension. In the mornings, I attended studio workshops and took careful notes during restoration sessions. In the afternoons, I mentored a few younger students who reminded me of who I might have been if I'd chosen differently at their age. They asked questions with the kind of hungry curiosity I'd forgotten existed. I didn't always know the answers, but I shared what I could. Evenings were mine. I cooked what I liked or not at all. I walked through markets alone, lingering at stalls, speaking broken Spanish, and learning better by listening. I made acquaintances slowly on my terms. There was a rhythm here that didn't ask for more than I wanted to give. One morning, a small envelope arrived, tucked between art catalogs in my mailbox. No return address, just my name in Haley's handwriting. Inside was a photograph sun-washed and slightly bent at the corners. It was the two of us on her first day of kindergarten. She wore red rain boots even though it hadn't rained, and I had a scarf in my hair I'd forgotten I used to wear. We were both laughing. Tucked behind the photo was a single line on a torn sheet of notebook paper. I didn't know who you were outside of being my mother. I'd like to learn. I set it beside the coffee mug on my table and stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know how to feel, but because I did. The next day, I brought the photo with me to the gallery. It sat at the edge of the table during my afternoon class, weighed down by a small river stone I'd found in a dry arroyo. One of the students pointed to it during our break. Is that your daughter? Yes, I said, smoothing the corner. That's someone I once raised. And now she's learning to see me as someone else. They didn't ask more, and I didn't offer. I turned back to the painting I was touching up a small, still life of grapes and pottery, the shadows falling across it just right now that I'd adjusted the background. Some vintages age slowly, but when they open, the taste lingers long after the last drop.